Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Real Power Dynamics with Kay and me and Crystal Gordon. I am your host, Crystal, conspicuous by her absence. She is knee deep in her postgraduate studies at the moment, so she will not be joining me today. But today I have my guest is going to be Mr. Brandon Mosely. Talk to him more in a second. I wanted to have my recommended reading for this week. It's called Hood Feminism by Kendall. It's a very good read. It's talking about Black issues as it pertains to feminism, more specifically hood feminism. So if you get a chance to check that out, please do. Highly recommend it. We've got no sponsors this week, so I won't be supersizing any meals, but it's all good, all gravy. So first of all, let's move right into our guest, because I got a ton of questions for this brother, because I haven't we comment on each other's statuses on Facebook and stuff like that, but I haven't had like a conversation with this dude in a while. So I met Brandon when I was a student at Dominguez. We were both political science majors. And those were the days, man. Sometimes I like look back on that time and I'm like, my God, this absolutely sucked. But then there's some fondness too. So we were in Model UN together as well. And that I remember my car was messed up, so you drove us to the Model UN meeting in Santa Barbara. Both of us were broke as hell. Excuse the language. This is
I had a little money. I had a little bit of money. Now don't play me.
Well, that day, I remember that day specifically. I'm not saying we were broke all the time. I remember being broke, and I remember
eating McDonald's.
Yeah, eating McDonald's. You got your cheeseburger. You asked for some Big Mac sauce. In decades, I never even thought of that, man. I've been going to McDonald's for years, and that's something I never even thought of doing.
Oh man, you remember that?
Yeah. So it was cool. And I met your lovely bride that day. Not that day, but after the trip was over. Those are good times, man. But both of us are not in that position anymore. We are, after that, you teach. So you do, because the theme of this episode is I wanted to have a conversation about faith, and some other things, but faith as it pertains to politics. Because I get on my show a lot of the times, people think I'm an atheist the way I talk about church. I'm not an atheist, but I'm not in that setting anymore.
Yeah.
And I just kind of want to, I don't want to have a debate. I just want to like see how I can get back to appreciating the church a little bit better than I used to. So you pastor a church, correct?
No, I don't pastor church. My father pastors a church. I'm an elder in the Church of God in Christ, which means I can marry, bury, and anything in between.
Okay.
I started preaching at the age of 6. I was in a youth and young adult pastor, and assisted my father as well for well over a decade. So
awesome. Yes.
I've done a little bit of everything in the church.
Okay, so you do that, and then you're a teacher as well, right?
Yeah, I'm a teacher as well. I teach in high school, senior level, a bunch of things, and I'm the department chair at the school as well for social science.
Okay, so I get the students right after they go to you is how that is, because I teach at the community college level. So the first thing, before we get into this discussion, first thing I got to ask you, Who do you have in the versus battle tonight, Snoop Dogg or DMX?
Oh, that's easy. I'm a West Coast cat, so it got to be Snoop. Gotta
I,
be
I'm going for I'm going with Snoop too.
Uncle Snoop.
I probably listen to more DMX. I'm going with Snoop because I just don't think DMX knows how to use a computer. I think that's a big part of these versus battles. If DMX can use a computer, then hey,
They probably
yeah,
have them together though tonight, like they've been doing. I just
yeah,
cause Snoop got a range of music, man.
yeah.
Like,
He's got a ton. Yeah,
yeah, he got a gospel album, bro. Like, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like what do you mean? So I think it's gonna be good, but I'm going for Snoop, man, Uncle Snoop.
yeah. I'm picking Snoop as well. But so what I wanted to ask you about first is what like when you're teaching in class, like what's your philosophy for teaching high school seniors? What subjects do you teach, and what's your philosophy for teaching them?
So I teach econ, government, ethnic studies, which
Hmm.
is divided into race and society, and another semester as well of I can't it slipped my mind. It's the same class, and it's living history, and I also teach AVID, which is a college preparatory class to get kids into college. And this last year, I taught U.S. history, but with an ethnic studies lens. So
Oh, okay.
my biggest philosophy that has worked for me is relationship building first and foremost. Um,
Right.
Kids and or young adults, people in general, they don't really care about what you have to teach them unless they know you care about them.
Right.
That's the first thing, and from there, I like to make everything applicable for them. So in my government class, it's not just going to be the Constitution that's it. We're going to look at the 13th and look at the effects of the government on people of color. We're going to look at the preamble and are these goals being met? In econ, we're going to look at minimum wage and how it affects, or poverty, how it affects minorities and people with less education. So those are things I like to kind of tie into with my ethnic studies course. I start with a sociology view of it, a lot of
Mhm.
W.E. Du Bois, stuff like that, then lean
Right.
into a survey course the next semester, which is touching everything from African Americans, Latinos, or Latinx, and the list goes on, LGBTQ community and stuff like that. So
Okay.
I teach a lot, bro, a lot of
Uh,
stuff. So I just have to find sweet spots everywhere, but it starts with relationships, and once I do that, I mean everything else kind of falls in.
yeah, that's very multifaceted, man. I didn't know.
You still there?
Sorry about that. That was
Okay.
that's got to get edited out. My cousin is trying to call me through Instagram, but anyway, um, but yeah, that's very multifaceted. I appreciate that. I have to in my political science classes. I have to teach a lot of that stuff as well.
Yeah.
Because you got to talk about you can't. I don't think you can have a political science class without talking about like the soft power influencers, not
Yeah.
just the presidents and stuff, but you got to talk about your W.E.B. Du Bois, your Booker T. Washington,
Yeah.
people like that. And what's the makeup of your student body, like
Um,
racial demographic wise?
it's majority black and brown,
Hmm.
leaning more brown.
Hmm.
It's a Title One school,
Okay.
so most of my students are going to be minorities. Majority of them. I do have some white students,
Uh-huh.
but and I mean it's what America looks like, especially on the West Coast.
Right.
The
Yeah.
browning of America. So that's my student base, and that's why I fought for ethnic studies class to be implemented. I was the first one to get that going, and
Yeah.
now it's a graduating requirement in the school district
Oh, that's awesome,
for
dude.
the sophomore
Yeah.
year class.
So that's kind of where I'm at too. Like I'm like when I started at Ventura College, which is one of the schools I work at. the Black Student Alliance or the Black Student Union was not chartered. They hadn't
Yeah.
had a Black Student Union in years. So I brought that back to the school. And like you said, it's kind of, those are the demographics. It's the browning of America, like you said. And I try to teach like a lot about stuff that's not necessarily in history books or textbooks.
Yeah.
I don't the textbook anymore for political science, because the government is changing up so like drastically. Like I remember I got stopped.
Oh, you got the.
Yeah, this anyway. I stopped using my textbook in 2017 because after like the first couple months of the Trump administration, it just stopped making sense to use a textbook because everybody that was in a position in his administration was already fired like by March. So it was like, you know what, I'm not going to have students waste their money on this. It's stupid. It's just, it just didn't make any sense to me. So when did you make the decision to become a teacher?
When I was becoming a father, I was in business. I worked 14-hour days. It was good money, but it wasn't like I say, it wasn't conducive to having a family. And I also always wanted to teach. I mean, I taught Sunday school, Bible study, being a youth and young adult pastor for years. I've dealt with, students that age level. So I just decided to go back, get my master's, and, start teaching. And it's been great ever since. I've been able to really build really great relationships. I've been voted 4 years in a row best senior teacher. So the kids are really taken to me, and be able to see a lot of them grow and them come back to me and tell me their stories. It's been amazing, to say the least.
Yeah, that's always that's one of the cool things about being a teacher. Like I've had students who have met in my classroom. Like I made them partners on a project or something, and then I see them like 2 or 3 years later, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we're engaged and we're getting married soon," and stuff like that. So the diversity matters in public education.
Yeah.
That's one of the things. And I kind of want to ask you, before I get into the meat and potatoes of what I really wanted to ask you about, is Nick Cannon was recently in the news for what a lot of people deemed as anti-Semitic rhetoric that he said. He had Professor Griff on his podcast. First of all, I don't know why you would have Professor Griff on your podcast. That's me. But like, what do you make of that whole situation? Because I've been getting into a lot of battles with people, and I don't think they really understand what the issue is behind that.
I think the biggest fear of everything is the idea of the Black Hebrew. First and foremost, you have to understand that the group that idea originally originated from is very militant. Okay.
Yes.
If you ever been on the East Coast, we're talking about New York, DC, they're out there screaming, a whole lot of stuff. Matter of fact, in the Obama film in Netflix, you'll see in one of the scenes them out there in the 80s calling white women different, derogatory terms. So it's that facet, right?
Right.
Then I think what he was really trying to say, and it came out poorly, was that we have to understand, if you understand history, the European mindset was to save these savages, right? That was their destiny, right? And I believe what he was trying to say, it didn't come out very well, that these people that you are calling savages you actually was living a savage lifestyle by killing, destroying, raping, to enslave people for hundreds of years, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Then the last thing is the idea of the Black Hebrew is a real idea, because the Limbas of South Africa has a direct DNA trace to Aaron, the high priest of the Bible.
Right.
It's been scientifically proven back in '96. You got Ethiopians that have been practicing the Jewish belief for, going all the way back to, Moses. So, I mean, there's something there. But to say, the way you said it, and on the platform you said it, without actually laying out the history and being sensitive to people, is very important, because you have people saying, well, they're fake Jews. There's no such thing as fake Jews. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
think that's really important that we understand that. Even if we say, well, Jews in the Bible are darker, let's say that. Well, there's this thing called intermingling. There's a thing called, you end up in Europe, you're going to marry people in Europe. That's why in Mexico, you don't see too many super dark people of my complexion, but there was more slaves who went to Mexico than went to all of America. So I think we have to kind of be very careful and understand our history before we make some of these statements that are very, very dangerous. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Because when I was back in the Dominguez days, those are probably some of my most militant days. I read a lot of the Black Hebrew stuff. I read the ISIS papers. I read just all this information that I was getting into, and it was kind of teaching me, not by necessarily professors, but just by passers-by or people who were telling me, and I was already in a vulnerable state anyway, because during that time, I just really wasn't feeling a lot of what was going on in my life. So it was easy for me to latch on to, this anti, not just anti-Jewish, but anti-everybody but Black rhetoric. Moving into the educational space and learning about Jews, I've had students who've told me just some crazy stories about, all of their aunts and uncles dying in the Holocaust, or great aunts and uncles, and just the stories that I hear. So, and like you said, there were some truths in he had some truths peppered in to what he was saying, but especially if you work in our space, you cannot say that kind of stuff. And there was a professor that I know who went on a rant about how much truth Nick Cannon was talking or whatever, and she got reprimanded for it. You know what I'm saying? She had to erase all that stuff off of her pages.
Yeah, you gotta be careful out here.
Yeah, you just can't do that kind of thing, man. And
I think the scariest thing is what happened is that, if you understand, he mentioned the name Farrakhan, and Farrakhan's an amazing speaker. If you listen to him, he can gear you up to do anything almost, right? But he's also known to someone who's be very, how can I say, inflammatory, when it comes to the Jewish belief and just the race, I would say race, culture.
Ethnicity. And we have I try to explain this to white people as best as I can, but we have a very complicated relationship with Farrakhan, because I don't agree with everything Farrakhan in the Nation of Islam says. I probably disagree with a good 45% of it, but I also recognize the good that they do in the community, and I also recognize the people who come into the community and do good versus the people who don't come to the community. You know what I'm saying? It's one of those things where, okay, I don't agree with all of Farrakhan's rhetoric, but do you accept his help or do you not accept his help? Especially when it comes to fixing up some of the problems that are in our neighborhoods versus other neighborhoods.
Yeah, And that's the
Yeah.
thing. I mean, you can't.
Yeah.
I can say, you can understand why he feel a certain way about America, of course,
Yeah.
um, because I mean, he's an older man that grew up through a whole lot of racism, and and this religion, this belief, changed and saved his life.
Right.
Um, so you get the passion he has behind it. We just have to be, all of us have to be very careful what we take in, without having a good filter to
Right.
understand, to understand what's reality and what might be, inflammatory, that's like maybe dangerous, because I mean, anti-Semitism is on a rise in America.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
it is.
and you look at the different synagogues that have been attacked, and things written and people threatened. We have to be very careful, because at the end of the day, no matter what your belief is, no matter how you feel, people, you have to be very careful not to hurt people. We don't want to see,
Right.
at the end of the day, if we're fighting for justice and things of that nature, the civil rights movement, a lot of Jewish money went into the civil rights movement for Martin Luther King.
Yes.
And that's very vital for us to realize that they were there, and they also was freedom riders as well that are Jewish. So just be mindful of those things.
Right, exactly. Because we need allies. We don't need this divisiveness. It's not doing anything for anybody. So I'm glad that you stated that, because it was very important for me to have another intellectual on this show, to echo those sentiments. And I purposely did not ask Brandon about this off air, because I kind of, we come from the same like educational background as far as Dominguez is concerned, and I kind of had an idea of what he would say. So I'm very, very glad that you could educate my audience with that, and I look forward to hearing when you do your podcast, you talk about those issues and stuff like that. But anyway, I want to get to the main reason why I'm here. That's to talk about religion, and this has been a problem with me, because I know you are a good, God-fearing Christian man. I used to be that, but I'm going to give you a little background as to why I've fallen out of the church. And I kind of feel, I do feel conflicted with it, because
Okay.
it's like, it's one of those things where um, I feel like I've kind of allowed the right to steal something, my religion, from me, something that I hold near and dear to me. So a little background. In 2017, I stopped going to church completely. And before that, I was involved in the church. I was helping out with the youth. I was doing a lot of stuff. My grandfather was a missionary. He met my grandmother in Jamaica, and moved to the United States. So I have a church background. But what I found, I guess it started in 2016. Where people, and it started with Bush and maybe even Reagan and Nixon maybe, but just the way that people kind of conflated their faith and their religion. And it started like the like to for the way the right has allowed Trump to kind of come in, and they make comparisons to him like, oh, he's Cyrus from the Bible and this and that. But at my home church, this is the thing. This is my home church. I'm not going to name them, but I went to church one day, and there was a girl that I liked at this time too. So she was cool, real sweet girl. And I was going to church with her, and I was doing all that thing. And then I went to church, and the pastor of the church said, in front of the church, he said, the only way that we're going to find our way back to God is if we vote for Donald Trump.
Is this a black
So
church or a
yes, this is a
multicultural
black
church?
church. That was the thing too, because before that I had went to right wing churches in the South, because that was my grandmother liked churches that weren't all black. So we would go to this day she's like that too. We would go to churches and a pastor might be black or another race. We went to an Asian church out here for a little while. And then when we moved to Tennessee and then to North Carolina, we went to these white churches, and I'm used to them politicizing church. That's something that they're
They do.
very
Yeah.
famous for doing. Especially down south, they used to make, like, the preacher would make Bill Clinton jokes regularly in his service and stuff like that, and they would pass out these pamphlets from the Christian Coalition, and it would be like, they would say they're not telling you who to vote for, but they will say like all this good, like if it was Bush and Kerry, it'd be like, Kerry believes in this and Kerry believes in that, and Bush is and that was what. So but 2017, it was like January 2017 is when I stopped going to church. I liked that girl that I was talking to. I liked her a lot, but I'm not the kind of person that's going to make you choose between God and me, or your church and me. And I just haven't been back to church since. And this is a thing too. And this is what what kind of want to figure out with you, because ever since I stopped going to church, my life has been a lot less complicated. I'm just keeping it real. I just do not worry about, like, I used to be kind of like one of those eggshell walkers where I felt like if I felt guilty about any like fun thing that I did, right? So it was like, and I was just like, when I got rid of that, I'm more comfortable with my decision making without the echoes in my head. And
Okay.
I think that a lot of that might just be me rejecting some of the ideology that I was brought up to me. So I'm trying to figure out how what I'm feeling, and just kind of, almost have a therapy session with you and see
Okay.
what's going on. Yeah.
So if I could give the listeners quick history, um, Christianity was not in politics until Goldwater brought it up in, I think, what was it, 64.
Yeah, Barry Gold.
Yeah, Barry Goldwater wanted to change the way the Republican Party was being ran, and not to be just fiscal conservative, because the Republican Party, as you know, was ran by the rich guys by that time. That big change happened around a little bit after Reconstruction. So we're talking about, like, before 1900, we're talking about like 1880, right? So
Right.
when he came through and did that, Reagan got an idea, was like, he might got something here. Then you had 73 when you had Roe v. Wade, and that's when all of a sudden Christianity and the right wing became bedfellows, right? Because
Right.
most right wingers were pro-choice at that point, until they realized we got to galvanize this Christian base, and this Christian base is the same base that we use dog whistle. Guess what? Racism with, dog whistle politics with. So it's almost like the same group. So to me, that's a big problem, because the separation of church and state does not just help the state, it helps the church, because we don't want the state or the government to control the way you believe or the way you worship. And that's dangerous and that's scary. So to get that out the way for those listeners who might be thinking, well, it's good to have people who are gun-ho Christians and things of that nature in politics. The problem is we really don't. We have people who use Christianity to get votes. Trump's not a Christian. Or maybe, I take that back. He may be a Christian, but he's not a follower of Christ.
Right.
And I think your thing is what I see in a lot of churches. They have built up religion and haven't built up relationship. When I say relationship, Christ came to build a relationship with us. He came to literally destroy the walls of religion. I mean, every time you read the Bible, every time someone of the religious sect, Pharisees or Sadducees, came around, he literally had a verbal beating for them, called them like, sons of the serpent, right? That's one of the sons of the devil. Said their heart wasn't right because he understood they were using religion to control people, right? I mean, there's 613 laws in the Old Testament. They added hundreds of more verbally to control people, right? And then let people know you're never going to be perfect, but we're going to make you continue to feel guilty, right? And Jesus came to take that guilt away and allow you to build a relationship. And over time in a relationship, as you know, you've been in relationships, you get better at it over time, right? You don't feel guilty about making mistakes. You say, I'm sorry, and you move on and get better. You know what I mean? If it is a mistake. And what happens is with, some churches, they build that fear, but they don't build that love. You know what I mean? And Christ, especially in the New Testament, is all about love. Christ was all about love and building relationships. Not saying you can do whatever you want, but he understood you're going to make mistakes to understand you're not going to be perfect. But he also understands if you love me, sooner or later you're going to get better. It's about maturing, right?
Right.
So yeah. I think a lot of churches expect people to like follow their commandments, and if not, you're on your way to hell. And that's not Bible. That's not biblical. It's scary. It's a control factor. And with the right wing, they have that perfect control base that as long as you keep abortion the topic, they're going to keep voting that way. And it could be diminishing everything else for them by voting that way. And they will just say abortion. Look they voted for Trump, and Trump has, the things he has done before becoming president. And we're not talking about while being president. Cheated on his wife. He has 3 different wives, right?
Right.
Cheated on all of them. He's said some really ridiculous things that was caught on tape concerning women. We don't know exactly his relationship with Epstein. So, just that alone, the man curses out loud. He couldn't tell you his favorite book of the Bible. Instead of saying 1 Corinthians, he said 1 Corinthians.
Yeah.
Like he held a Bible up in front of the church without talking to the pastor or ever going into the church or praying. A true believer wouldn't do that. A true believer, if they would have went to the church, they would have went there praying. They wouldn't have went there to take a picture in front of the church holding up a Bible, not even correct. It's like almost he was holding that Bible up as an authoritarian figure. So, I would say before we move on, brother, just don't allow them to do that. And I got so much more to say, but I know you got another question.
No, it's fine, because that's kind of been my thing. It's like I think what I have done and what I've been trying to do on this show, because what the right has done is they've taken Christianity and they've turned it into their own thing. They've turned it into their religion. And I tell people all the time, the origins of Christianity are not European. They're not. You know what I'm saying? It's like they're African, but I cannot in good conscience pray to the Jesus that you guys pray to, that believe in this other thing, like this like with Trump, and he said grabbing women by the thing and all that stuff, and you just acting like it's perfectly fine, and then just the mulligans that they give this man is insane. That's kind of like what I just need, like, because I'm around a lot of Christians, and I think that a lot of them lose people like myself when it becomes all about the judgment, and more so when it comes about pushing an agenda.
And when you say judgment, are you saying like judging people?
Judging people, yes. Judging people.
I would say this to them. The Bible never gave us approval to judge people. And true judgment is telling the people where they're going to end up, right?
Right.
And we don't have that type of power. Now, the Bible talks about the idea of, I don't want to say inspection, but the idea of helping someone along the way. But to do that, you have to build a relationship before you do that. With Jesus, anytime Jesus talked about anyone's sin or about them being forgiven. He did something for them or built a relationship with them before. We look at the if you look at, for instance, the woman with the issue of blood, before he said, go on, you sin no more, you say whatever it may be. He literally healed her first. The crippled, he healed them first, then said, go and sin no more, right? The problem is a lot of times these Christians peep into other people's lives that they haven't built a relationship with, and they make their own corrections without even really understanding their life. You have to kind of understand why people do the things they do, and sometimes it's not for us to even comment on it. You know what I mean? It's not for us to be overbearing and put our belief on them. You know what I mean? Because they may not be ready or may not want that, that belief. So at the end of the day, it's for them to live their life. I mean, Jesus prospered in the middle of a Roman occupation. And the Romans were you know the history. Romans was beyond, if you biblically speaking, sinful. You know what I mean? So come on, people.
It's like and I listen to some of these preachers, like if I the guys I trust are like T.D. Jakes and people like that. I listen to him and I get a good message and a good word. But like when I listen to like Ken Hagee or someone like that, and they talk about hate the sin, love the sinner. But then when I listen to some of the stuff they say, it sounds a lot like they hate the sinner and the sin. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And that's kind of like the part of being a Christian that I'm trying to reconcile through, is to just, because I don't like, I'm like the way I'm built, I just can't judge people on what they do based off of how they interpret the Bible or how I interpret the Bible. You know what I'm saying? And that's kind of like my I guess my big issue with religion at the moment.
And I think that's the problem, that we've made it a back to religion, because at the day of Christ, I mean, he came to destroy that barrier that religion built. Religion makes it difficult for you to get to God, right? And religion is very structured and it stays the same. It's very traditional. A relationship grows and gets better and changes. It's flexible. And that's what Jesus came. He said, I came to give you life and life more abundantly. Right. And that's not what religion does. That's why when he died on the cross, the veil was torn in the highest place in the temple to give us access to God that we never had before. So I think it's really important for us to realize it's not this religion and this structure that people are using pious platitudes like hate the sin but love the sinner. That mixes things up for people, where they just hear hate and they don't know how to separate. You know what I mean? They don't know how to separate the two. And now you out there threatening people who are getting abortions and driving by gay bars and throwing things at it or something like. You know what I mean? That's where you get that from.
Right. Okay. So thank you. So how do we, not saying that you've got all of life's answers, but I'm curious how, as people like who lean more left, I'm unashamed about being a registered Democrat. So, but how do we get people, how do we take the church back from that audience, from the people who have co-opted God and turned him into this thing that they want him to be, and that he was never meant to be?
And to be honest, I don't think they've completely taken, how can I say, Christianity, because the Democratic Party has a big Christian base and they happen to look like me and you. So I think the name of the game is we have to be able to look at the whole view of things, right? And I think that's what they need to do. They need to start looking at the whole view of things and realize if they vote for a Democrat, that doesn't mean all of a sudden you have no morals and things of that nature. That's crazy to me, because we have to understand abortion is a moot point. Same-sex marriage is a moot point. They've already been taken care of by, guess what, the Supreme Court, right? So why are we using this? I mean, since 73, they've been using it, right?
Right.
And it's crazy to think about that out of all these things, all these issues that we have in this world, in the United States of America, especially looking at America right now, that's the biggest issue. That's the issue that's going to stop you from voting, maybe your pocketbook, or voting for social change. That's the issue. So you got to really ask yourself, like, is that really what Christianity is all about, right? Because Christ is all about compassion, right?
Right.
Compassion. He's about, at the end of the day, who did he hang out most with throughout his life? Sinners, because he knew the only way you could change a sinner is being around them, building relationship, letting them know who you are, things of that nature. And he cared about the poor, right? I mean, he cared about those who were hurt, those who were, having serious issue. I mean, the very first miracle that we see outside after Jesus that Peter even performed was from a poor guy asking for money at the gate on his way to prayer. You know what I mean? So instead of giving him silver or gold, he said, I have none, but what I will have you, I'll give it to you in the name of Jesus Christ, right? And I think it's really important for us to realize Jesus cared about the downtrodden. And if we look at I don't want to make it a party issue, but you look at the two parties, historically since the 1960s, what party's been trying to do that other than, Clinton in the 96 Reform Act of welfare, but that's a different story. But what party's been historically trying to do that, and that would be the Democratic Party. And I think they're coming to one issue based voting, and you don't want to be one issue based voting.
Yeah. So how do you, first of all, I'm sure you've got a diverse array of acquaintances and friends and stuff like that. How do you handle like Trump supporters and stuff? Like I'll tell you my rule real quick. If you were grandfathered in and I was already friends with you, family members, whatever, I won't turn on you because you're a Trump supporter. I'm not welcoming any new Trump supporters in my inner circle, though. And I know you're in a different space because your father is a man of God, and you guys have to welcome everybody. But how do you, is it possible for you to maintain relationships with MAGA people?
Gun-ho ones, absolutely not. And I say that I mean like friendly, like we're best of buds and we like each other close. We talk all the time. That's gonna be that's difficult. Now I have a lot of friends that I've known that are MAGA people, and like you said, grandfathered in. The thing is, my biggest thing, my drawing line is we can debate policy, but we could not debate racism.
Right, exactly, and that's kind of what I don't like about what we're doing right now is I don't like when I see journalists ask politicians if Trump is a racist. Those are not that's not a debatable talking point in my opinion, because he clearly is a racist. It's just how do we reconcile having a racist in office, and how do we approach it from the point of view of how do we get the policies that we need and stuff like that. And I've heard Black conservatives say things like, oh, well, everybody's a racist and stuff like that. And it's like, come on, man.
When they say everyone, here's the deal. We have to understand the true term of racism. Racism is not about just hating someone or thinking you're superior to someone. It's a power thing. It's all about I mean, the United Nations 1972 tried to describe what racism was, and they pretty much saying if you, from any arbitrary way, prevent someone from having access to power or opportunities or being fulfilled in life, that's racism, right? So you look at what's happening today, right? That's what it is. Then when people say, well, what about poor whites? How can they be racist? They've literally been the muscle of the wealthy elite class,
right,
ever since you had the plantation class that made these poor white people feel like, well, at least you're not black, so go out there and make sure you don't allow them to take your jobs. That's
right.
they've been that power play for them. So to understand that, of course, we've had racists do some amazing things. I mean, LBJ said the N-word better than me and you. And
Yeah, I know. He's the best.
yeah. And,
Yeah.
64, 65 acts, right? In very dark and murky places, you can get some light. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I'm okay with that. But we have to understand, if someone's willing, to listen, willing to make those changes and because LBJ saw the historic side of things. He wanted to go down as the greatest president of all time.
Yeah.
His policy out overseas didn't work too well, but within the borders he did okay. So if you look at that, that's great. Trump doesn't have that. Trump has me, and he already thinks he's superior to everyone. Then on top of that, racism poured into that. I mean, does is all about how it's going to benefit him and how it's going to rile up his voters. And he understands his voters. His voters are poor white people who are undereducated, who feels like minorities and immigrants have taken the golden age of America. So he uses all these terminologies, that is historically racist, not only because he believes it, because he knows the people who he's fighting for believe it, right?
Yeah.
So go ahead, sir.
I was watching something on MSNBC, and they said something that Trump is so racist that he can't even figure out like bad things to say about Biden. You know what I'm saying? The way he attacked, he's so racist and sexist. The way he would go after Obama on birtherism, the way he would go after Hillary Clinton on being a woman and stuff. And with Biden, he's like real like tongue-tied as to how he could go about attacking this guy.
Because Biden is middle America white, and he's in his 70s. He's an old school politician. So, you know what I mean? He can't say anything remotely close to what he said about the other ones, even though when you look at President Barack Obama, I mean, the guy was, his resume was, in terms of like his life, was excellent. I mean, he had no issues, no extramarital problems. I mean, he was a moderate Democrat. I mean, he was like, you know what I mean, in terms of politicians, right on, spot on, and a brilliant speaker and super intelligent. So, I mean, and he still found something to say, the birther stuff, right? Or he messed up here, he did this wrong. And now you look back at these tweets that didn't age very well, and look at his performance. It's mind-boggling that he's still president. He should have been.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of how the Democrats need to handle things, and I kind of think the Democrats need to be able to control narratives better. Like when they talk about defund the police, and me and you know what defund the police means, but middle America doesn't. And I think, and a lot of people on our side are saying run away from the defund talk, which I kind of agree with. But I also think Democrats need to be able to control what they're saying better. I like if there's terminology that you want to use and you could frame it in a way where Americans understand it, you need to do that. You need to. I think if you approach this, if you approach American people from a place of scarcity, then you're not going to sound like you're going to sound like an idiot to them, or you're going to sound like a punk to them. If you approach the American people from a place of abundance, like, okay, this is what we need to do. This is why we need to defund the police. We're not trying to tear down police departments. We're not trying to abolish the police. this is what we need to do to fix the police and make them better. This is what we need to do. And don't let Republicans control the narrative on these kind of issues. I think we'd be better off. That's just my opinion.
I think the scary thing is, though, that we do have in terms of the defund the police. I mean, where that comes from is a party, not party, is an entity outside of the Democratic Party.
Right.
BLM, which many of the members aren't Democrats. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they're not.
And they're more leaning socialists. And when we speak of the Democratic Party, the biggest fear has been for the last, I'll say last 4 to 7 years, is having the party to become co-op like the Republican Party was co-op with the Tea Party is, and
right.
The Freedom Caucus, right? So
right, yeah,
we're seeing that's the fear. And the defund, I mean, the real framing is, and this is a very old idea. Idea goes 15, 20 years back, is divest to reinvest. That's what it really is. You know what I mean? And like you said, framing is important. Selling something, you have to frame it. And the idea of divest meaning literally take some of the money, divest some of the money, and reinvest in areas in the community. I mean, if my last podcast kind of talks about this a little bit.
Yeah, it's a great podcast.
Thank you. And that's at the Be Real podcast. Please listen. But I think it's really important for us to realize that we have to also take, like you said, take that narrative and have these fresh new ideas and push for it. But we also have to be okay with having, how can I say, push in chunks, right?
Right,
like,
yeah.
Small yeses become big yeses. And I think the biggest issue is sometimes we're looking for the biggest change right away, but we need to just start making change until we have that power again.
Yeah.
And when we seize that power like we had in 2008, that we don't get afraid of losing our seats, which happened anyways, and push that stuff through, because the Republicans have no, they have no heart or morals when it comes to, you saw when they've changed the rules in the Senate, so many times to push their power. And even when they had their little power and they stopped Obama, it was 10 months or so, or 13 months, 14 months before the election, where he couldn't get any federal judges in, not just the Supreme Court, but dozens of seats in the federal bench. And now we got Trump, who they know in their mind, if I don't like polls right now, I don't want to be too headstrong on that, but I think they feel like he's about to lose, and they're about to lose some power in the Senate and the House, or they already lost the power in the House, that we are going to push him through anyways. We don't care what we said before. So they're not real. When we say this is the party of morals, they're not moral people. Moral people, the standards stay the same for them that they placed on everyone else, right? They're religious falsehoods that they push. Right. And that's what goes back to the idea of the religion side. The Pharisees and Sadducees did the same thing. They set standards high for everyone else, but behind closed doors, they lived a rotten life. That's what a lot of, I don't want to say all Republicans, of course, because that's the paint stroke too broad. But some of the ones that we see in leadership right now in the Republican Party, that's what they're doing.
Yeah, and that's like I was talking to a friend of mine who's a part of the Lincoln Project, who are anti-Trump Republicans, and I told him, one of the things I said to him was, the problem with the Republican Party is the direction they were heading in for years was always to this moment that we're in right now.
Yeah.
And I think that if they get their party back, they need, because I thought Michael Steele, when he was the Republican chair, I thought he was very good for the Republican Party. I got a lot of crap from people who would say you're this and you're that, but I thought he was good. Because I do appreciate a diversity of ideas in the Black community.
I like John Kasich personally. I'm a John Kasich fan right now. I think he was. Yeah. I think he would have been amazing for the Republican Party. That's what the Republican Party, I think, should be. Coming closer to the middle, because the answers is always, to me, somewhere in the middle. It's not far left. It's not far right.
Yeah, exactly. You and me are on this. Yeah, you and me, and this is from somebody that's far, far left that understands not all of my leftist ideas are going to be good for the country. They might be good for me individually, but I understand that there's got to be some kind of middle road that we all have to kind of strive towards. So before we go, I have a couple more questions. One, how is your church handling the pandemic at the moment?
I think it's much like many other churches, having live services on
Okay.
Facebook or Instagram, what have you. People sending in their offerings through digital means, and that's the best you really can do. I come from a denomination, Church of God in Christ, where our Bishop C. Blake, have said we needed to take a wait and see approach. Even when churches could open up, he was still saying wait and see approach, wait and see approach. I mean,
Right.
he has one of the largest churches in America, and he understood the importance of, let's not rush to it, and understand God is still God, and church, you can still have church. You don't have to be in the building. And it's crazy to me that you have people who feels like they have to be in that building to have that praise, that worship, or build that relationship. Don't get me wrong. Don't forsake the assembly of the saints. I get that scripture. I understand that. But in the time that we're in today, we have to be very mindful and very wise. I mean, sometimes people are hyper spiritual and say, "Oh, God got me." And maybe that's a place where God said you're supposed to use wisdom. That
Right.
all the science is telling you this, maybe you should follow the science. And I haven't told you that I got you. You know what I mean? So this is not a time for a miracle. This is a time for wisdom.
Man, I could literally talk to you for like 6 hours more about this topic because I there's like I said, there's a lot of stuff that I need to unpack personally, but that's for another time. But
Yeah.
um, I definitely thank you for that. But before we go, I wanted to ask you about because you could probably say this more eloquently than me. What do you say to the brothers and sisters who do not want to vote for Joe Biden on November the 3rd? How do we bring these people to the polls? I'm not so much worried about California. I'm just talking about places where it will 100% matter.
I think the biggest thing we have to look at what happened before. That same mindset got us this. I know we would like to say that they're the same person. They're not the same person.
Not at all.
Joe Biden has sensibilities that he's going to put people in his cabinet, and he's going to, how can I say, be held accountable by a party that's going to ensure that he does certain things, right? That's the reason why you see someone like Obama bring him in, right?
Right.
Trump is a one-man show. I mean, there's so many parts within, so many positions within his cabinet that he has not filled because he really doesn't care, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't care about how things end up. It's all about him. And Joe Biden at least has enough sense to not think that way. Yes, Joe Biden has a really difficult record to look at, but he's been in politics since the late 60s, early 70s. I'm going to tell you, if you've been in the public life that long and you're white, um, you're going to have those issues, right? That's just
Right.
the case. And I understand it's like, picking from something that's horrible to bad to you. But progress is important.
Right.
And if we can get him in, he's going to select some people in his cabinet that will have power, that will bring other people in, that will set us up for the next 4 years. Because I don't see him running again after this. That will set us up with maybe a more progressive person. But we need to make sure we've run someone that can win, because although we may say it doesn't matter, if Trump wins again, he's going to continue to pick federal court judges that will shape our lives for the next 30, 40 years, right?
Yeah.
Look at the
Right.
people who are on the court today and look at the people who've been on the court. They average, and the people he picked average age is like 50. These cats
Right.
are
Yeah.
living past 80 on the court. So that means over 30 years. Then if you just say, okay, who cares about the Supreme Court? What about all those courts underneath the Supreme Court where you pick Supreme Court justices from? He's packing the bench. So that's a problem. Then you have the whole idea of destroying our relationships with foreign powers, and also the conversations he's having with foreign powers that in the betterment of himself. That's destroying the country and the fabric of what we've been fighting for. And we don't have a friend in the White House right now that even acknowledge Black Lives Matter or acknowledge the disproportionate killings of people of color. At least Joe Biden is saying those things. He understands those things. He understands where he messed up, right? He understands that he knows he needs the Black vote, and he needed the Black vote to be in the position he is right now. He owes us. So since he owes us, we gotta hit him.
Is he gonna have a Black woman as his running mate? Do you think he will?
Yeah. I think he definitely will. And my thing is, I don't even care if he does, to be honest with you.
If he could pick Sarah Palin as his running mate.
Oh, don't say that.
I'm voting for him. I'll vote for him. I hope he doesn't. He could pick my little sister as his running mate.
I wish Andrew Gilliam didn't have that issue that occurred in Florida.
Right, yeah.
Because if he, you know what happened with him.
He released a statement yesterday.
Yeah, if that didn't happen with him, man, that would have been a powerful ticket. Powerful ticket in my mind. I think he's getting pressured into voting. Into selecting a Black woman, which I'm not big in pressuring. If they want to do it, they're going to do it. That's my mindset. Yeah. But if he does do, which I think he is, that's gonna speak volumes to where he is. And I think he may do it. I'm leaning towards he will. But who is the question? Is who should he pick? Stacey Abrams,
right?
No, Kamala Harris,
Stacey.
Bass. The list goes on. But I think at least if we get him in office, at least we have someone that's an adult and that has sensibility. And socially and emotionally, Donald Trump never ever matured. He never grew out of that because he's always been give me my whole life. And everything from not going to the Vietnam War to, his dad giving him a loan or his dad like propping him up, floating him, and even from not taking accountability when his companies went bankrupt. This is who we have. He's a 12-year-old wealthy child. You know what I mean? And how he acts, his temperament. So vote Joe Biden. But dude, come on.
There is one topic that I do have to get with you on because you just did a podcast on it, and I want to direct people to the Be Real podcast, but not the Cypress Hill Be Real. So let's get that in order. But I definitely have to talk to you about this Black on Black crime thing because this is a myth that I've had to. Every episode of my show, almost, I do have to bring this up and how it is a myth, and definitely. it is not a real thing. So I'll say this, and then I'm gonna let you go, and then we'll close out. But the thing is, you mentioned this on your show. You talked about proximity, and I'll tell you about myself. I am around mostly Black people, aside from when I'm teaching in Ventura. When I'm at LA Harbor, I've got more Black people and stuff. But the people in my life who've helped me out the most have been other Black people. The people in my life who have screwed me over the most have been other Black people. Yeah. The people who I love the most are other Black people because those are the ones I'm the closest to. The people who I don't love the most, hate the most, if you will, are other Black people because that is what I'm around,
Yeah.
So I want you because that's kind of like one of the things I'm seeing them all up and down my social media with the black on black crime and how they use that issue to divert away from like serious issues in our community when it involves constables of the law and our people. So you framed it so perfectly. So I don't want you to take too much from what you said in your podcast, but just talk about that a little bit and educate my audience because they'll appreciate it more from you.
I think the biggest thing is if you listen to my podcast, you kind of understand where the history of black on black crime phrase been coined, but it's been a myth that's been propagated through science, through white superiority to create a fear of young black youth that they're dangerous and they're inherently violent, which is a falsehood. Right. That's eugenics. That's Nazi ideas.
Right.
That's the idea to keep people from living together and understanding each other's culture. Because proximity is important. If you get closer to each other, you can start understanding their culture, understanding who they are, and you might build relationships. That's the one thing when I say the powers that be never would want. When you think of someone like Fred Hampton that started to build these coalitions with like white poor people and Latinos, he died. He was killed by the Chicago PD. But black on black crime is not real because the rate of crime in every single other racial group is almost identical, right? Whites commit the same amount of crime against whites that blacks commit against blacks. And another thing is we have to look at poverty as a reason why people commit crimes. People in households that are below the breadline are twice as likely to commit a violent crime, no matter what race you are. But black people are also the ones who are most likely to live in poverty as well. So the real issue is social issue, right? Systemic racism. It's not that we just, for some reason, have a vendetta against each other and we just have to commit crime and that's who we are. Everyone commits crime. There's no such thing as black on black crime. No such thing as white on white crime. It's just simply crime. And when we find ourselves, anytime we bring up anything dealing with police brutality or other issues in our community, even ourselves, we shoot ourselves in our foot and say, we got to love each other. You can have as much accountability as you want, but if you don't have the resources, you're not fixing anything.
Right.
Bottom line.
Yeah. And gang violence is assuming what they mean. That's what they mean by black on black crime. Gang violence and police brutality are not the same issue. They are two different issues. And again, if you live in a community with people, those are the people that you are the closest to. The opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is indifference. So if you're close enough to somebody to hate them, then you probably loved them at one point. So we got to change that narrative. So what I'm going to do now, because Brandon, I can talk to you for hours, but I want to, save some of this for another episode. One of the things I want to do is get one of our old classmates, LaShonda, and kind of do like a panel discussion on the 2020 election, because I think it's very important on your platform and my platform that we do more of these shows where we are talking about the issues. I'm flooding my Spreaker account. I'm flooding Google Podcasts, everything with content, just because I want people to know. So where can we find you to listen to you outside of outside of this show? Where can we listen to you?
You can find my show on every major podcast platform. If you search either B.Real REAL or Brandon Mosely MOSELY. You can also find me on Facebook and Instagram with that Be Real Podcast. If you search Be Real Podcast, you'll find it. I will give you the link. Maybe you can put it in the show notes as well. But that's where you're going to see a lot of speeches and things of that nature. I'm also part of a nonprofit called Push People United Servicing Hope. I'm one of the co-founders, and one of our agendas is a 9-point plan that we've been working with the Riverside County Democratic Party with. That's actually building a whole lot of steam. That's a that's all about police reform as well. So you can find that also under push or by searching me as well. So I'm doing a whole lot out there because I think it's time for real systemic change, and we have to stop sitting on the sidelines, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense, bro. And before I close out, and before like when we end the episode, I still want to chat with you for a
Yeah.
second, Brandon. But I wanted to give a couple RIP shout outs. One to CT Vivian,
Yeah.
and one to Dr. Congressman John Lewis. Both passed away within hours of each other.
Yeah,
Really good for the cause. And then I also want to give a shout out to RIP shout out to William Brooks. He was part of the Majority Report with Sam Cedar, and he had his own podcast. He passed away due to an undisclosed reason earlier in the week. So just want to remember them. Probably try to get some faces posted if you're listening to this on YouTube. Yeah, man. Again, Brandon, thank you so much for doing this with me. And again, we definitely need to participate in more of these kind of dialogues so we can kind of let people know and to really embrace intellectualism and understand what we're dealing with come November 3rd.
exactly.
All right. Cool. So with
All right.
that said, we are done. Thank you for joining us, and I will catch you on the flip side. This is Real Power Dynamics with KME and Crystal Gordon.